Hi, good morning, everyone. Good morning from Berlin, good evening, wherever you are. And my name is Renato, and today I would like to talk to you about a topic that I'm really passionate about, that is how to make all your end users happy, wherever they are in the world. Behind me, there's a huge map of the world, a map that you could have found in any IKEA shop until a few years ago, a 2 meters wide map you could have had for just about $100. A map that actually is not there anymore. And the reason it's not there anymore in the shop is quite a simple reason. This map didn't make every customer happy. When this map landed in the shop in Korea, many customers were not really happy with what they saw on the map. And what they saw on the map was that the sea between Korea and Japan is labeled with the international name of Sea of Japan. Now, what's wrong with that? Well, many people in Korea don't like the name. They call it East Sea. And what did IKEA do to sort out that problem? They did a very simple thing. They got rid of the map. So back to the slides, please. Now, if you see the slide now, this is, well, they were forced to recall it. And what did they say? They say, we recall it in every country of the world. That map is not going to be in the shop. Quite easy. You can still find it now on eBay for just about 500 euros. Is a bit more expensive. But they did a quite sensible thing. They now get a much cheaper map. One that if you open up the map, it's much easier to avoid mistake when you have nothing on the map. It's just a white map with no labels, no country, no borders. Now, cool. What has this to do with software development? We are software developer. How does that affect us? Well, actually, software companies are often affected by this kind of problems. This was in the news just a few months ago. It was November last year. It was on the BBC. Usually when company end up for these kind of issues on main website, they are not happy. Usually that's what they try to avoid, but that was the main headline. Apple changes Crimea map to meet Russian demands. Now, here the focus is not what's right, what's wrong. The focus is a software company was forced to change something, whatever by laws, whatever by user request, to make people happier in a specific area, and of course make some other people happy. So of course the following day the headline was slightly different. Was Ukrainians condemn Apple's Crimea map change. What does that mean? Well, of course, as soon as one part of the world knows that something has been changed to address an issue locally, someone else might be upset too. So third day in a row, Apple was again in the news, and this time was like, Apple to take deeper look at disputed borders. Now, that was, of course, not just Crimea. There are many other scenarios where Apple had to take a deeper look. And still, the situation is very unclear today. How do you address this issue, and what usually is the problem behind these issues? Well, I would like to start with a very personal story. Just about 3 years ago, I'm a runner. A very slow runner, but I enjoy running. So when I had the chance to join a side project helping a small startup to build a platform for runners around the world, runners that join events, trying to find the best events, local events, and find other runners in every corner of the world, I of course said yes. And I got involved in developing the platform where you can see here a screenshot of the sign up. It was very simple. You type the place you call home, your city, in my case is Berlin, here in Germany. And of course you have your little profile, here is still a picture missing, with the country associated with your profile. So as the requirement was to see a community with names and country, okay, cool. You have someone in Bulgaria, someone in the UK, someone in any other country you want to have. Right, finally one of the founders tested the product, signed up, enjoyed it. That was the feedback he got was Hong Kong people won't use it. is pretty offensive here. And, well, it was based in Hong Kong. One of the main markets was supposed to be Hong Kong. So, what was the issue there? Well, the requirement was quite simple as a software developer. Was like, I want to have a name with a country below. And what made the users in Hong Kong not very happy was that under the name, the country was simply China. Now, as a software developer, you don't develop every piece of code you use. Of course, you use a third-party library, you use an API. In this case, we were using Mapbox, and you try to, of course, blame the third party you're using. You say, well, we're just using an API. We're just calling someone else. So you use a product, you call, you open a ticket, and, well, first feedback you have is, well, there are different fields you can use. You can use the proper name of the country. So isn't there an official name that you can use instead of simply China? Yes, of course, you can say, this is the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region of the People's Republic of China. That's the English name. Well, that will then fit really well in a UI. So next step, ask what you can really do. It's like, well, most of our users, that's the third-party feedback, is that Hong Kong is part of China. Whatever wrong or right it is, we knew that that wasn't a solution locally for our problem. So what's the most common approach to address this kind of issue is, well, whenever you can, try to avoid to show data that you don't need. So, for example, in that specific case, you don't really need to show the country. Maybe the region is enough. Maybe you decide that showing Hong Kong as a region and showing main city like Berlin is good enough. You don't really need to go through details. Okay, but so what? There's an issue in Hong Kong, maybe there's an issue in Crimea, but is that really a big problem? Well, if I go and take a holiday in Puglia in Italy, I'm Italian, of course, there's usually not a big issue. And if I do some reverse geocoding from coordinates, or I put a label to my picture and I get the region wrong, well, bad luck. No one, maybe someone might find it funny, someone gets upset, but hardly gets upset because it's usually not a sensitive topic. But there are many areas in the world, many more, where things can go badly wrong, and big players get often affected by that. So this is a collection of headlines just from the last few years. This is Google's plan for removing Palestine from its map. This is Forbes. So Israel missing its capital. So second example. One more. This is from the Telegraph. Maybe the headline is a bit too stretched, but still, Google Maps errors spark invasion of Costa Rica by Nicaragua. Was not actually what happened, but still, get the borders wrong on a map, and people get annoyed. Much more commonly in the last few years, last couple of years, is China getting annoyed by foreign corporations labeling area that they consider part of China as independent country. So Chinese regulator representing a string of foreign corporations, including, you see here, airlines, like Qantas, or fashion brands or hotel chains, so not just software company, but company that develops some software product or had some software product, for, in this case, having labels that were basically indicated as country, as independent country, and simply drop-down list. Well, the funny thing is that in many of those websites was not even a choice. It was probably a choice that had some consequences because, well, the first reaction was that basically those websites were banned in the country. And of course, once that kind of problem surfaces, many other are affected because, of course, as soon as local users start to see a problem or know that one company, for example, has a wrong or what they perceive as wrong labeling, they can look for thousands of companies. So, of course, many more brands were kind of either boycott or had issues and were in the headline for not the wrong reason, but anyway, a reason that was not really what they wanted to be there for. Now, I'm a developer, so you might wonder, first problem is, who can you blame if you get something wrong or apparently wrong in a drop-down list? I mean, who is really responsible? The developer? I mean, I know a developer, my background might not be related to geography, political science, or anything else. Actually, I might build my test case using even a fictitious country and build my unit test and don't care about. Actually, most likely I'm going to be a lazy one. I'm going to just do it using a picture taken in my back garden with a GPS coordinate from my city. Is there really any quick fix we can do? Well, Think about, for example, and how many people are really affected. Think about reverse geocoding. Reverse geocoding sounds like a complicated word for a concept that is really basically simple. You just take two coordinates, your GPS coordinate, usually in your phone, and you associate a location to that. And usually it's kind of a smart location. If you think about your picture that you post to Facebook, album online, Dropbox, Google, Apple, whatever you use, usually you have some smart album, the last holiday I did in Paris or something else that collect picture according to a city, not to a specific address or a specific location, a country or whatever. And so basically, if I take a picture in Milan, it might tell me that this picture was taken in Milan and the label is probably Milan, Lombardy, Italy, or whatever is the local language. This picture was taken in Hong Kong, in the mountains, and too close to the border with mainland China, and you see that the algorithm is probably a bit too clever, try to associate the picture with the closest large city nearby. Well, the largest city is actually on the other side of the border, and it's Shenzhen. Can you fix this kind of issue? Certainly. This is a bug, you can easily fix it. But what can you do when, for example, the picture is, this is a beautiful picture taken in Black Sea. So again, we talk about Crimea. Probably different user in different area of the world might have different expectations. So maybe labeling the country is not the most sensible part unless geography is really your main area. But when can you really, and when, face this kind of issue? Well, we saw signups, of course, address, phone numbers, maps, geolocational. So when you try to take a picture and label it with something, for example, as well, image recognition services. You think that now there's a lot of artificial intelligence involved. So if I take a picture of the Colosseum in Rome, I don't expect to use the GPS coordinate to say that that's in Rome. It should be clear from the picture itself. And that can go wrong as well. And as well, now, a popular one is really voice interaction, if you think from Alexa to Siri to anything else you might use. And we see a couple of examples soon. But how can you really address? Think about a very simple example, labeling. This sign-up page, not the most recent, but anyway, from Google. And you can see that if I'm based in Berlin, suggest you as a location, the default one is your country, that is, in this case, is Germany, with the local name in brackets. But you can see that they don't say country, they say location. And you can see in the list already that there are some interesting entries. And if you go over that location, it actually tells you that it's your country or territory of residence. So, okay, think about that. Instead of location of country, why don't you stick to, why do you have to say country where it's not really needed, when you might get people annoyed by entry? And as well, yes, there are some standards. You might follow a standard, but as well, make sure that the library or third-party library you're going to include or the API you're going to use is up to date. Yes, because name change, little or not little country might be recognized, might not be recognized, might split or whatever else. And usually are the area where people are most sensitive about the topic. And as well, you can play around with localization. Of course, you might have different lists in different languages or different locale, but that's a bit of a harder job to manage. Maps. Now, think about how big players play with that. If you go, for example, this is Bing. If you type Italy, that's in the German version, but you have you see the country and you see a nice border around it. So, okay, cool. Those are the borders of Italy. Not every country actually has borders. Many countries in the world are actually on the map, don't have borders, not because the big player, not because Microsoft or Google or Apple doesn't know where the borders are. It's intentional. You don't want to show borders. Google Maps has no border in at least 32 countries. Well, you might think, oh, just 32. Well, 32 countries include China, include India, include Russia, as we saw before, in case, of course, Ukraine again, Pakistan. That means that more than half of the world population lives in countries that Google Maps doesn't show borders. And maybe 10, 15 years ago, you could think, oh, well, most of my users are in the US, most of my users are in Western Europe, a few users in Australia, and I don't care about the rest of the world. Well, now you need to care, or you want to care. You want to think that you have a global audience if you have a global product, and most of the users might not be in one of the countries that you used to assume were the standard country for your product. And actually, many companies like Google actually goes one step further, actually in a controversial way, I would say, to even show different borders according to where the user is based, either by, of course, IP address, either by user agent, so the language, or basically if I identify where the user is based, I might give a view that is locally enforced. Another example of problem that might surface is autosuggestion. We see autosuggestion issues quite often. What do we mean by autosuggestion? It's like when you type in a map, when you go to Google Maps or whatever you use, you usually don't type the entire address, the full address. You just start to type and expect to have some suggestion and pick up what you want. But think if you are in an area like beautiful city of Jerusalem, where different people have different ideas and there are different names involved, different audience might use different labeling of the area, even sticking just to English, even without thinking about Arabic or Hebrew or whatever else, is just simple names. And how do the big player handle those issues? You can see that, for example, if you search for Ramallah in Facebook, you see that they label it as a city in Palestine, interesting. But if you type and search for Jerusalem, it tells you, of course, it's a city in Israel, but they often use as well a suggestion of East Jerusalem as a city, but without a country. And that's intentional. Again, Google, same approach. No need to share information you don't need. So again, Ramallah has a multiple entry as well as an Arabic name, but no country associated. And Jerusalem, that's of course a Jerusalem entry for Israel. Actually, in Google Maps, if you type East Jerusalem, there's no auto-suggestion. Actually, the only auto-suggestion is for something entirely unrelated, a road in a different city. Of course, Google knows where the place is and where the city is, where the area of the city is. And of course, if you type the full name and search for it, you end up in the right place. Microsoft used to have a different approach. You see, for example, Bing used to have even 2 entries for the same. So another approach is to even offer multiple entries to the user to choose what they wanted. They actually slightly modified still with multiple entry, but again with an entry that is hiding the country associated. So a more neutral approach. Now, what about voice? In the last few years, we have played around a lot with the Alexa Siri of this world, and there are fundamental changes in the way you handle problem in voice. There are 2 major changes if you think about it. First one is, with voice, you have much more flexibility in the information you can give to the user. You're not anymore limited by the label in the UI, that may be 64 characters, 124 characters, or whatever else. Maybe something smaller, something longer, whatever you need. You might have a few seconds to say something. At the same time, you have the problem that the user can really ask you anything they want, and you need to know how to handle those error scenarios, because if you simply say input value, oh, I handle the error, simply say that value is not a country because it's not in my list, you might quickly end up in big problems. So play around a bit with your voice device. Think, for example, if you ask Alexa, what is the capital of Israel? You see that just a couple of years ago, the approach was very simple. The interaction was just, capital of Israel is Jerusalem. Well, they actually realized that there are better approaches to handle the answer. So now what they say is, Israel has designated Jerusalem as its capital, but this has not been formally recognized by the international community. And you see that this approach is used for many areas in the world. Of course, the same, if you ask Alexa, where is Crimea, it's not giving you a Boolean answer, or it's not simply saying, well, for Ukrainian is Ukraine and for Russia is Russia. It's giving you a bit of a story behind the issue. So it's basically a major landmass in the Black Sea in 2014 following a referendum reunification with Russia, blah, blah, blah. So the explanation tells you more information what's happening behind the scenes. So trying to give a better context of what is going on. Of course, you can trick the answer as well with voice interaction. I said before, you can ask straight ahead a Boolean question. So if I ask Alexa, is Kosovo a country? Well, Kosovo a country is something that even inside the European Union, not every country has recognized it. So what's going to be the answer? Well, here, as every good developer, they blame someone else. So the answer in this case is, according to Wikipedia, Kosovo is a landlocked territory in the Central Balkan Peninsula. So again, you have ways to go around even Boolean questions. Something that maybe in a drop-down list is a bit harder to handle. So which kind of solution you can implement when you face this kind of problem is, well, first of all, you need to be aware that you might face problem. Second, of course, you have the general approach of doing internationalization or localization and try to hide or present different information according to the user based either on the language, based to the IP address, based on whatever you want. It's a controversial approach anyway. You can as well hide or remove information. At the end of the day, people use your website because maybe they want to buy a book, because maybe they want to book a course, because maybe you're offering a search for marathons around the world or whatever your product offers. Usually they are not there to look at borders. They might be put off by an incorrect or what they perceive an offending labeling, but they might be okay if there's no labeling at all. So again, forgiving labels might help. I mean, there's usually not a strong reason to use the word country if you can use location, or if you can even put nothing, because at the end of the day, if the drop-down list has the name of countries, well, it's quite clear what that list is. And if you are in doubt, try to figure out what the big players do and try to see if you can apply their approach, or at least if you agree with their approach. Note as well that many API based on location is quite straightforward. Many have actually API that allow you to show different borders. So like this is again Mapbox, have ways that you can, for certain countries in the world, show different borders according to either user input, or most likely you want to do it either to the IP address or use it to the locale of the user, but be careful with that. And main problem is how do you test, how do you get through those problems? It's like usually you test with just your local picture taken in your local garden, picture taken here in Berlin or whatever else. Well, there are easy ways. You don't need to go to India or go to China or fly to Australia. It would be nice, but you cannot at the moment, and it makes usually no sense. There are simple tools. You can use simply a VPN client to simulate to a different place in the world. You can, of course, edit the EXIF data of your pictures with easy apps online to simulate that the picture was taken in a different place. You can as well look at simply Google Stats to see how a name is used mainly in a specific area, and build your test cases and comparison. But I would like to close with a why. I mean, why at the end you want to do that? Well, first of all, you build your own product, you want to make your user happy. I mean, you want to care about all your users. We said at the beginning, the audience is now really international, and you want to make all of them happy, as far as well as you can. You want to raise as well awareness on the problem, because it's often not perceived. You might build your own app just taking a library and not thinking about it, and the problem surfaces later on when there's a big PR disaster because your company get not good feedbacks or end up in the news. And as well, a kind of training for software developers. So at the end of the day, think about the implication of what you are building and try to make your user happy. Thank you. I put together a few of the slides as well on my website. And thank you very much, and please donate.